Your BMW may be capable of more than you realize, and the wiring harness tells part of the story. In this video, we're uncovering 10 little-known tricks that can help you get more from your motorcycle. Stay until the end, because trick number 10 takes less than 2 minutes, costs nothing, and has helped keep my R1200 GS running strong well past 140,000 kilometers. Number 10. The throttle adaptation reset. They charge you to diagnose. Here is what almost no BMW owner knows. Your ride-by-wire throttle and your fueling are constantly adapting to wear, altitude, fuel quality, and the slop in your throttle bodies. Over thousands of kilometers, those adaptation values drift, and on the Boxer twins especially, that drift is exactly what causes the hunting idle, the snatchy on-off throttle, and the cold start stumble that every GS forum complains about. Dealers know this. They will charge you a diagnostic hour to investigate surging, and then run a reset that takes the tech 30 seconds. Last month, a guy brought me a 2015 R1200 GS that surged at steady highway speed, that annoying pulse where the bike will not hold a constant 120. The dealer wanted to chase sensors. I did not touch a sensor. The trick is to do a throttle adaptation reset. On the air-cooled and water boxers, you can force a relearn without a GS911 by doing the closed throttle relearn procedure. Key on, do not start. Let the system cycle and find its throttle stops. Then start and let it idle completely untouched until the fan cycles. On bikes with a basic adaptation menu, a cheap GS911 clone, or even Motoscan on your phone over a €10 OBD dongle, will run throttle valve adaptation and idle actuator reset directly. That R1200 GS stopped surging on the first ride. No parts. The dealer would have charged €130 just to tell you the throttle bodies needed balancing. And speaking of balancing, a reset means nothing if your two cylinders are fighting each other, which on a Boxer is almost guaranteed by now. Moving forward, we arrive at another unexpected contender. Number 9. The throttle body sync. Most owners pay €150 for. On any twin, and the Boxer is the textbook case, your two throttle bodies have to pull the same vacuum, or the engine fights itself. When they drift out of sync, you get vibration through the bars at idle, a lumpy tick-over, worse fuel economy, and heat. Riders blame Boxer character. Half the time, it is just an unbalanced sync. BMW calls this a scheduled service item and bills it accordingly. The reality is, it is a 20-minute job. A buddy of mine had a 2013 R1200 RT that buzzed his hands numb on long days. The dealer said that was the engine. It was not. The trick is to buy a twin-column manometer or a digital sync tool. A carb tune or a Twin Max costs €40 to €70 once versus paying for the sync at every service. Warm the bike, pull the tank prop or the sync ports, hook up both columns, and adjust the linkage screw until the vacuum columns sit level at idle and stay level as you blip the throttle. On the water Boxer, you balance via the diagnostic controlled bypass, which Motoscan walks you through. That RT went from a paint shaker to glass smooth. The buzz was gone. A €50 tool pays for itself the first time and every service after, but a perfectly synced engine is still being strangled if it cannot breathe, and BMW's Airbox hides a restriction most owners never find. Next on the list is a name you might recognize. Number 8. The Airbox snorkel restriction hidden from you. This one is real, and it has been a known secret on the S1000RR and the Boxers for years. BMW restricts intake AIR flow from the factory, partly for noise regulations, and partly for a smoother, tamer low end that feels premium in a test ride. On many models, there is a literal velocity stack or snorkel arrangement, and on the S1000RR, there is a secondary intake flap, and on some Boxers, a foam baffle inside the airbox path. The engine has the cams, the valves, and the engine control unit map to make more power. It is just being told to breathe through a smaller hole. A track day regular brought me his S1000RR, convinced he needed an exhaust to wake it up. He did not. The trick? Depending on model, this is the removal of the Airbox snorkel and baffle, or fitting a high-flow filter element. A BMC or DNA drop-in filter for the Boxer or the S1000RR flows substantially more than the dense factory paper element while still filtering to a safe micron rating, and it drops straight into the stock Airbox, so no remap is strictly required for the filter alone. On the S-Bike, making sure the intake actuator and flap are working and not stuck closed from gum restores the top end the factory designed in. That S1000RR pulled noticeably harder up top, and he kept his money for tires instead of a full exhaust. A €60 filter lasts the life of the bike with cleaning, versus €25 paper filters every service. Here is the thing though, more air means nothing if your fueling cannot keep up. And that is where BMW's locked-down engine control unit starts working against you. Now let us move to the next entry on the list. Number 7. The Lambda fueling fix for the Boxer Surge. The air-cooled and early water Boxers run lean from the factory to pass emissions. Dead lean. That is the actual root cause of the low RPM surging, the popping on overrun, and the excess engine heat that cooks your right thigh in traffic. BMW knows. Emissions compliance wins over your comfort every time. The engine is calibrated right on the edge of stable combustion, which is why small throttle changes at steady speed feel like a rhythmic hunt, especially in top gear around town or on light cruise. A customer with a 2014 R1200 GS Adventure had the classic constant throttle surge, and a bike that ran so hot it was miserable in city traffic, especially in slow filtering, where airflow is minimal and the heat soak builds quickly around the cylinders and heads. The trick? Richen the mixture. The cleanest path is a fuel module like a booster plug, an O2 sensor emulator, or a proper flash tune. The booster plug is genuinely a plug-and-play piece. It tricks the ECU's intake air temperature reading so the closed-loop fueling adds a few % more fuel across the range. It clips into the existing connector in about 15 minutes. No cutting, no permanent changes. A full custom flash does more, but costs more and needs a specialist, and it also allows proper map reshaping across throttle positions instead of just biasing sensor input. That GSA's surge disappeared, and it ran measurably cooler. Riders consistently report the engine heat dropping because it is no longer running at the ragged lean edge of combustion stability. Throttle becomes smoother, especially in steady-state cruising, where the bike finally stops hunting. Around €120 for a module versus a dealer shrugging and saying they all do that, which is often just code for it meets spec, not comfort. And once your fueling is right, the next restriction is the one BMW literally welds shut on some models. And this is where things take a turn. Number 6. The exhaust flap and DB killer truth. Modern BMWs, the S1000RR, the R Series, the Big GS, use a servo-controlled exhaust valve that stays partly closed at low revolutions per minute for noise tests, plus a restrictive baffle. It's a back pressure restriction sitting right in your power path, installed to pass a drive-by sound meter, not to make your bike run well. At certain throttle openings, especially in the low to mid-range, the engine control unit actively manages that valve position to smooth noise output and meet regulations, which can create a very real sense of delayed response or muted acceleration when you roll on the throttle. A rider with a 2019 S1000RR thought his servo was faulty because the bike felt choked off the bottom, hesitant to rev cleanly, like something was physically holding the motor back, especially from 3,000 to 6,000 revolutions per minute, where you expect it to start waking up. The trick is a servo buddy or servo eliminator, a €20 plug, which keeps the exhaust valve fully open so the engine breathes freely through its range. On bikes where you keep the stock can, freeing or replacing the restrictive baffle opens the back pressure restriction that compounds that effect. On the older Boxers, the catalytic converter era mufflers respond well to a less restrictive slip-on, not for peak horsepower, but for how quickly the engine builds torque, Pair it with the fueling fix from Trick 7 and the bike behaves like a different machine. Sharper throttle response, stronger mid-range pull, and less of that strangled feel between gears. That S1000RR woke up through the mid-range almost immediately, not because power was added, but because restriction was removed from the delivery curve. The servo was not broken. It was doing exactly what BMW designed it to do: hold the bike back for compliance. But AI airflow front to back means nothing if the spark lighting that mixture is weak, and BMW's service intervals are quietly setting you up for that. Now we move to something completely different. Number 5. The spark plug interval lie on the boxers. BMW lists very long spark plug intervals, and on the twin spark boxers there are 2 plugs per cylinder, 4 total, which makes a dealer plug job expensive enough that owners put it off for far too long. Worn or carbon-fouled plugs on a twin spark boxer cause exactly the rough, idle, and weak low-end people blame on how it runs. In reality, it is often just incomplete combustion at low RPM being masked as character. A guy with a 2016 R1200R came in with a stumble down low that 3 diagnostic visits never cured, no fault stored, no sensors flagged, just a bike that felt off everywhere below mid-range. The trick: change all the plugs yourself, on schedule or earlier, and use the correct iridium part, not whatever the counter guy hands you. On the twin spark engines, make sure you do all 4. People change the easy top plugs and forget the lower ones, which then drag the whole engine down. Gap to the BMW spec, apply anti-seize lightly on the threads, and torque properly. It's a 30-minute job with basic tools. That R1200R's stumble vanished immediately after the swap. Smooth idle returned, throttle pickup cleaned up, and low-end torque felt like a different bike. 4 plugs cost him maybe €40, against a dealer plug service that runs well over €150 with labor, and they are the cheapest performance insurance on the bike. Fresh spark is wasted though, if the fuel reaching the injectors is being delivered through a filter BMW pretends is permanent. The next entry shows just how far this idea can go. Number 4. The lifetime fuel filter, buried in the tank. A retired rider brought me a 2012 R1200 GS with a final drive that had started to whine, that faint gear noise many owners dismiss as normal. On a BMW shaft drive bike, that sound is often the first warning sign that something expensive is happening inside the rear bevel gear housing. Ignore it long enough, and you are not talking about maintenance anymore. You are talking about replacing an entire final drive assembly. That is a repair that can easily exceed €1,500 before labor is even finished. And in some cases, the bill climbs much higher once seals, bearings, and diagnostic work are added. The trick is simple. Ignore the word lifetime. Manufacturers love that term because it reduces scheduled maintenance on paper, making ownership costs look lower and service schedules look cleaner. But oil does not care what the owner's manual says. Gear oil is constantly exposed to heat cycles, heavy loads, moisture contamination, and microscopic metal particles shed from normal gear wear. Every kilometer slowly reduces its ability to protect the bearings and gear surfaces that keep the driveline alive. That is why I recommend changing both the final drive oil and gearbox oil at sensible intervals, around every 40,000 kilometers for most riders, and sooner if the bike spends its life carrying luggage, a passenger, or tackling long highway trips in hot weather. During every oil change, pay attention to what comes out. Metallic glitter on the drain plug magnet, unusual discoloration, or a burnt smell can reveal problems thousands of kilometers before they become catastrophic failures. The job itself is remarkably simple. The correct hypoid gear oil, a fresh crush washer, basic hand tools, and less than half an hour are all that is required. The total cost is often less than a single dealership labor charge, yet it protects one of the most expensive assemblies on the motorcycle. In the case of that GS, we caught the problem early. Fresh oil, regular inspections, and careful monitoring kept the bike on the road. Years later, it is still running strong. Had the owner followed the lifetime recommendation without question, there is a good chance the final drive would have eventually become a four-figure failure. Few maintenance jobs offer a bigger return on investment, and almost none are this easy. But even a perfectly maintained driveline cannot protect a BMW whose electronics are slowly being compromised by a component almost nobody ever thinks about. And then there is this. Number 3. The final drive and gearbox oil lifetime myth. A retired rider brought me a 2012 R1200 GS with a final drive that had started to whine, that faint gear noise many owners dismiss as normal. On a BMW shaft drive bike, that sound is often the first warning sign that something expensive is happening inside the rear bevel gear housing. Ignore it long enough, and you are not talking about maintenance anymore. You are talking about replacing an entire final drive assembly. That repair can easily exceed 1,500 euros before labor is even finished. The trick is simple. Ignore the word lifetime. Manufacturers love that term because it reduces scheduled maintenance on paper, but oil does not care what the owner's manual says. Gear oil is constantly exposed to heat, pressure, microscopic metal particles, and moisture contamination. Over tens of thousands of kilometers, its protective qualities slowly degrade. The gears and bearings inside the final drive continue working just fine, right up until they suddenly do not. That is why I recommend changing both the final drive oil and gearbox oil at sensible intervals, around every 40,000 kilometers for most riders, and sooner if the bike spends its life carrying luggage, a passenger, or seeing aggressive riding. The job requires the correct hypoid gear oil, a fresh crush washer, and less than half an hour in the garage. The total cost is often less than a tank of fuel. In the case of that GS, we caught the problem early. Fresh oil, regular inspections, and careful monitoring kept the bike on the road. Years later, it is still running strong. Had the owner followed the lifetime recommendation without question, there is a good chance the final drive would have eventually become a four-figure failure. Few maintenance jobs offer a bigger return on investment, but even a perfectly maintained driveline cannot protect a BMW whose electronics are slowly being compromised by a component almost nobody ever thinks about. But that is only part of the story. Number 2. The ground strap and connector fix behind phantom faults. BMWs, especially the CAN bus boxers and K-bikes, throw bizarre intermittent faults, flickering dash, random warning lights, weak starting, ABS errors that come and go. Owners panic, and dealers start replacing expensive control modules. The real cause is almost always corroded ground straps and dirty connectors. The CAN bus system is extremely sensitive to voltage drop, and a poor ground makes the whole bike behave like it's haunted. A customer had a 2014 R1200 RT throwing ABS and ESA faults that no one could pin down. A module quote was looming. The trick is to clean and tighten every main ground, engine to frame, battery to frame, and the negative strap, and to hit the main connectors with electrical contact cleaner and dielectric grease. Pull each one, inspect for green corrosion, and reseat. On the boxers, the ground behind the engine and the connectors under the tank are the usual culprits. 1 hour of work and a €10 can of contact cleaner. On that R1200 RT, the phantom faults vanished completely. The dealer would have started swapping control units at hundreds of euros each, chasing a problem that was a dirty earth the whole time. Pay attention now, because the number one trick is the one that saves the most money and the most engines on the modern bikes, and almost nobody does it. And this is where the list gets serious. Number 1. The coolant and valve clearance. Truth on the water boxer. Here's the most expensive thing BMW soft pedals on the modern fleet. On the air and oil-cooled boxers, valve clearances are checked far less often than they should be for how the bikes are actually ridden, and tight valves on a boxer don't tick. They go silent and burn. By the time you hear nothing, you're looking at a valve job. On the water-cooled boxers and the S1000RR, the coolant is treated as long life, but degraded coolant plus BMW's known cooling system quirks lead to overheating and head problems that surface right after warranty. A rider with a 2017 R1200 GS water boxer came in with a bike that had never had its valves looked at and was starting to run rough and lose compression on one cylinder. The trick: check your valve clearances on the real-world interval, not the optimistic book number. Every 20,000 kilometers on a hard-ridden boxer is cheap insurance, and it's a feeler gauge job on the air and oil-cooled twins that a competent owner can do in an afternoon. A tight exhaust valve caught early is an adjustment. Missed. It's a burnt valve and a cylinder head. On the water boxers and the S1000RR, change the coolant on a real schedule with the correct BMW spec fluid and check the system holds pressure. We caught that GS with one valve closing up, adjusted it in time and saved the head. A valve adjustment is an afternoon and a feeler gauge. A burnt valve and head rebuild is well into 4 figures. This is the one that decides whether your boxer sees 60,000 kilometers or 250,000 kilometers. Enjoyed these insights? Hit subscribe and come back for the next countdown.